Coming up this week on the show, we're going to be talking to Matt Ranney and George Kola about how they use FreeBSD at Voxer and how to get more companies to switch over. After that, we're going to show you how to filter website ads at the gateway level using DNSMask. Very cool. All this week's news and, of course, answers to your emails, all right here, right now on BSD Now, the place to be, SD. BSD Now, episode 58, Behind the Mask, recorded October 8th, 2014. Hey, I'm your host, Chris Moore.
And I'm Alan Jude.
And we're glad to have you guys with us this week. We've got a little bit more sleep between the two of us now since coming back from Euro. And, of course, I got really sick because, when you fly halfway across the world, that tends to happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, aside from that, I'm glad to be here this week and looking forward to next conference, Meet BSD, in a couple weeks. So hopefully be all better by then. Have you been sick too, Alan?
No, I've been fine.
Oh, man, you lucked out. I got home, one of my kids was sick, and I caught it a couple days later, and I caught something else, and next thing you know, the doctor's like, you need these really strong antibiotics. And when you read the warning label, it's like, can be used to treat anthrax. And you're like, wow, that sounds really strong.
Yeah.
You should not have these, take these while driving. So, yeah, I'm apparently being burned up by antibiotics as we speak. But life is good. Life is good. I'm coming to you over the wire, and Alan is as well. So no fear of catching anything except awesome BSD news this week.
Exactly.
So speaking of that, what's our first headline this week? I think it's some more EuroBSDCon stuff.
Yes, the NetBSD Foundation, or netbsd.org anyway, has their report from EuroBSDCon. This year's EuroBSDCon had a record number of NetBSD developers in attendance, which is nice to see. And the NetBSD guys had their own dev summit as well, which I think they did in Malta as well, but this was their biggest one. And so they had a room set aside for them, kind of how the FreeBSD guys did. And so they got to work on some stuff, and they have their report and a group photo that they took, which is nice.
Nice.
Also, Pierre Ponchery from the EdgeBSD project was also there. We've interviewed him before, and he talks about EdgeBSD, which is his fork of NetBSD that tries to do some of the more radical stuff that they don't want to do in the main project, and then eventually maybe that gets merged in once it's stable.
Sure.
And then we like to see a record number of NetBSD people at a conference. I know before we've sometimes had trouble trying to find a couple of them in order to get them on the show and stuff. So it was nice to see a record number of them at the conference and a good number of NetBSD-based talks at the conference as well.
Good. Well, hey, Alan, do you want to try switching me to audio only, since our producer is saying that the audio is pretty poor? And, if I kill the video, I don't know if
maybe that will
sure me.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll give a little more bandwidth or something. I'm not sure what's going on today.
Yeah, if you just click the little video camera on Skype, it should.
Let me kill my video. Okay. We'll see if that gives you hopefully better sounding audio now.
Yep.
I don't know if you can tell the difference in your ears or not.
We'll see. Okay. So.
We'll see. Okay.
Oh, yes. Right. Your audio just kicked up very nicely.
Okay. Good deal. So next up in the news, though, so that is neat, first of all. And of course, we want to mention we met a lot of these NetBSD guys while we were at Euro, and it was really nice to see it so well represented.
Yes. And I got Petra from the NetBSD group to agree to an interview. She just has to find a different webcam because her current webcam is bolted to her telescope.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. We were talking to her about that.
Yes.
And the solution was to get a wireless mic and stand really far away. But or you could try and unmount the camera.
Or just grab another camera or something.
One way or another, we'll make that happen.
Yes, we'll make that happen.
Very cool. Okay, well, next up in the news, we got some upcoming features in OpenBSD 5.6.
Yes.
So, as you know, if you're an OpenBSD user or follower, they're getting ready to release 5.6 in just about a month from now.
Yep.
And one of the developers has written a new blog post talking about a bunch of the new features coming in. So, obviously, the big one, LibreSSL, which we've covered pretty extensively the last couple months. So, this, I guess, will be the first release where you have the official LibreSSL built in.
Yep.
And then he also, let's see here, we got hackathon reports. What's some of the other new features he's talking about?
They got a
here?
big list over here. Pull that up quick. Fixed SSL, corrected SSL, fixed SSL. Stopped
That's all Libra
HTTP.
SSL stuff.
The new HTTPD stuff is in there. Some KQ stuff. Prevent X server crashes when you're using Zarus, whatever that is. HTTPD, SSL, HTTPD, SSL. Some driver fixes.
SSL, lots of HTTPD.
Good driver fixes in there.
Reading through lists like this sometimes.
Let's
Yeah. See.
They got quite a few driver fixes.
Log libraries properly now. That's not SSL. That's good.
Software rebuilds work correctly when the volume metadata has a different data offset than currently in use.
Fix some panics with the BWI firmware. So that's cool for Wi-Fi users.
Some fixes for RC.D. Sysmerge, which is their thing for updating your files in /etc. They got some fixes for that for when the example changes and the corresponding file needs to be updated. Because normally, it's the other file, it's the files where you've made a change that's important. But when the examples get out of whack, it's like, oh,
yeah.
You want to make sure those are updated because people start from the example to build their config, right?
This is a long list of stuff, and of course, more SSLs, some fixes to the relay decode that handles HTTP headers. They updated X server to version 1.15.2.
Nice.
Cool. I mean, there's a lot here, I'd say. We're probably skipping over some important stuff. Our apologies, OpenBSD developers, but it's a big list.
It's a very long list. And if you want to check it out and find all the goodies, then definitely take a look.
Yeah.
Or you can just
email or shoot us a message on IRC on what we missed and how important that was.
Wow, this list is long.
That's what I mean. My eyes are glazing over looking at all these entries.
Yeah. But on November 1st, you'll be able to get your actual the versions.
Okay.
So, the best way to see what's new might actually be just grab it and go.
Cool. Okay. Well, let's see here. And there's also some comments detailing too on Hacker News, talking about 5.6 as well.
Cool.
So you have that link open there, Alan?
I don't have that one now.
Looks like just comments regarding the article here. But yeah. So again, 5.6 coming soon. Check it out now if you want to beat it up a bit. But if you can wait, the official release will be around the same time FreeBSD 10.1 hits, it sounds like. So exciting times. Okay, well, next up, this is actually really cool. I was reading through this earlier, but Cavium, I guess that's how you pronounce it, right, Alan? Okay, it looks like they're sponsoring some FreeBSD ARM v8 based implementation.
Well, specifically, I guess they're the guys that make the machine, and they're going to donate some of them to the FreeBSD Foundation so that developers can actually work on them. Which is, I guess, their ThunderX ARM CPU family. Yes. So, with really some of the other ARM stuff, like, the Raspberry Pi and the BeagleBone, they were small enough and cheap enough and available enough that developers could go and buy one for $50 or $100 or whatever and work on it. But these are higher-end server-type implementations. And so they're going to donate some hardware so that developers can actually work on these and bring up FreeBSD on them. And the goal is to have ARM v8 architecture be tier 1 in FreeBSD, which means on top of full support for everything, complete binary packages for everything. Yay. Which would be fantastic. Great. Well, they said this platform has the potential to have up to 48 cores. So, wow, that's definitely that's server-based stuff there. Exactly. So, yeah, this is really cool. But Cavium, the company which is involved in this deal with FreeBSD Foundation, seems to have a lot of BSD fans, we note. So, more power to you guys. This is awesome. We're looking forward to seeing this hit tier 1 at some point. It says here. The articles say when they're targeting. Is it 11 or? Probably, but it says Cavium is excited to enter into this collaboration with the FreeBSD Foundation. FreeBSD is a well-respected development community and brings critical software expertise and valued application enablement to the ThunderX ecosystem. So basically, they're looking for a nice open source OS they can work with, and that will provide their customers with all the apps they'll need to actually do stuff.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I know they do mention that about how the package repository having over 24,000 applications and a broad array of options for developers, system administrators, and end users. So this is very exciting and cool
Yeah,
work.
and they talk about the processors being able to handle up to 100 gigabits per second of data, which is very useful.
Nice, nice. Well, we'll have to see at some point if we can get a developer to come on and
Yes, somebody
talk to
who's
us
actually
about
working
this.
on this and tell us what it's like to work on this.
Yeah, that is definitely neat. Okay, well, let's see. Next up, we have an update on, or actually information on updating Orphan OpenBSD ports. So I know we had discussed a while back OpenBSD porting over Port Scout from FreeBSD. And now that they've done that, they're actually making pretty good use of it. It looks like they're looking for people to help update some of their unmaintained ports, which great way to get involved, even if you're not a big developer. You know, ports is a good stepping stone. But they've set up a new subdomain, portroach.openbsd.org, which will let you view all the ports information easily and see if there's something in that list that tickles your fancy.
Oh, hey, this port that I sometimes actually use is 6 versions behind. Why don't I update that so that it's there when I want it?
That's right. That's right. So, of course, if you're interested in learning how to port software or just want to update a port you use, this is a great opportunity to get involved. So check out that site, find an Orphan port, and give it a home now.
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. Well, before we go into our interview for the week, of course, we want to mention the sponsor, which is IX Systems. You know, as usual, you guys, IX Systems and those great folks. Do you have the link up with the pictures?
It happens. One of the pictures is of the IX slide when they were presenting from the opening session.
Ah, yes. Nice, nice. Well, yeah. Gosh, let me see. I think I may have taken a few of
I think most
photos.
of these are from you, yes. There's Theo's up here giving his talk, and you can see standing beside Groff.
Yep.
There's a room full of people. Kirk giving his tutorial. There's Jordan from IX Systems giving his talk about the next 10 years of FreeBSD. There's some guy with a scruffy beard talking about ZFS and stuff.
Apparently some of the people at the office didn't recognize me. They're like, wait, we don't have any pictures of Chris. And they're like, oh, no, that is Chris.
Yes.
Whoops. Well, I'll they'll get used to me when we see them.
Yes, we'll make fun of them in person shortly.
But of course, being that this is the sponsor spot, we want to mention the URL, which is ixsystems.com/bsdnow. Go ahead and let them know that we sent you. And of course, get in touch with those guys. These are the guys getting ready to put on the Meet BSD conference in the Bay Area, which meetbsd.com, if you're interested in going to that. Do try and get it signed up soon. It should be a blast.
It will.
At the Western Digital offices, it sounds like.
Exactly.
Or I guess I've never been there.
Neither have I.
Sure. They have a big conference center, or how that works?
It's their office, so I guess they have some conference rooms or something. But it just it really goes to show that IX, on top of just selling servers, they actually have very deep relationships with places like Western Digital, LSI for the HBA, Supermicro for the hardware and stuff. That Western Digital doesn't let just anybody use their office building to have a conference.
That's correct. That is correct. So, yeah, this is exciting to be able to do this. So, again, if you're anywhere near the Bay Area or need the excuse to get out there and meet a bunch of cool BSD folks, do try and come out to meet BSD in a couple weeks. We're flying out, I guess, Halloween. And conference starts the 1st and goes through the 2nd, and then there's a couple of days of Dev Summit afterwards as well. So
should be a fun
stick
weekend.
around for that. Yeah, looking forward to it. And of course, we'll have reports on that when we get back.
Yep.
But in the meantime, again, if you're looking for a server, big or small, everything from the FreeNAS minis, which they build, and of course they sponsor FreeNAS among other projects such as PCBSD. Get in touch with the guys at IX. This is a company full of hackers and developers and people who know and speak BSD, know and speak open source. And they're not just salespeople who
while they're very good at BSD, they will do Linux if you want them to.
Yeah.
So don't feel like that you have to have you should only buy from them if you're using BSD.
No. It goes beyond that. Exactly. I mean, sure, they have a lot of BSD experts there, but they're just open source experts as well. So, whatever it is that you need put on the servers, get in touch with these guys and they can make it happen for you.
Yep. And remember, they ship internationally, so it doesn't matter where you live; they will get that server to you.
Definitely. So again, ixsystems.com/BSD now. Let them know that we sent you, and I know we would appreciate that. Cool. Well, we'll be back with our next segment in just a moment. We're joined now by Matt Ranney and George Kola. Thank you for coming on the show this week, guys.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you.
Great. I'm there with Voxer, and we're here to talk about BSD at Voxer. So first of all, I guess you'll have to pick who goes first, but each tell us a little bit about your backstories. How did you get involved in BSD first?
Sure. Well, I'll go first. So, so I've been a Linux user for a long time, and when we started, so I'm a co-founder of Voxer, and when we started a long time ago, we got pretty popular. We were running on Linux, and we had some very tricky performance problems that we could not solve. And our friends at Joyent, who have a lot of dtrace expertise, and they said, if you got on a platform with dtrace, we could actually solve these problems. And so we did, and they could. So that's when we sort of saw the light about the value of dtrace. And then as our business needs are changing a little bit, and we are building our own infrastructure, running our own hardware, and that we control, not like in the cloud or whatever. And we started. We're like, we really got to keep dtrace, and specifically, we got to get the benefits of ZFS, and especially the L2 ARC with the sort of new, more affordable SSDs that are coming out. So we were like debating whether we would do SmartOS on our own hardware, which is the Illumos variant that Joyent maintains, or to do FreeBSD. And the FreeBSD 10 got trim support with for SSDs with ZFS, and Illumos still sadly does not have that. And we were like, man, this is interesting. And that sort of, at least for me, that started my investigation into like, is BSD a viable option? And a few months later, here we are.
Cool.
Yeah. My background is that I had used like variety of Unixes, but mostly in production it has been Linux so far. But I've used Solaris and BSD like a while ago. And coming to Voxer, they were a big SmartOS shop. Like everything was running on SmartOS. And we had some like stability issues that we ran into. One was an ARC cache bug, which essentially ended up rebooting like 12 of our servers at midnight, causing crashes. And then we were trying to evaluate if there's any other equivalent, and we couldn't go to Linux because Linux didn't have dtrace support, and or the only Oracle Enterprise Linux has it, but it's not good enough. And so the choice came down to basically be like FreeBSD or SmartOS. And personally, for me, I actually liked FreeBSD a lot more because as a programmer, the documentation is actually much better, and the community is actually a lot more responsive if you have questions. So the Illumos-based variants, the documentation is not as good, and and then like I had like played around, like we all use Macs, so Mac is BSD based, and we actually see a lot of like crossover, like DispatchQ, which is done in like Mac and iOS, moving to FreeBSD, and a lot of similar stuff. And I actually we thought like FreeBSD would be a better platform. It's a more stable platform. And then the thing that clinched the deal was ZFS with trim support.
Yep. I guess you guys are really looking forward to the L2 ARC getting LZ4 compression as well, so you get more L2 ARC out of the same size drive.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's going to be a win.
Yep. So could you tell us what Voxer is and what do you guys do there?
Sure. So Voxer is a voice communication platform. It's best known as this kind of walkie-talkie free app in the App Store. But the sort of high level goal is we want to be like a time shifted voice system. So like you can think of it like a walkie-talkie, but like we really want to get like some of this kind of asynchronous communication modes like you get out of text with voice. So like phone calls are kind of like not a thing people are doing as much anymore. A lot of this is moved to text, but especially on your mobile, like it can be really hard to enter like lots of text, and voice is just a much more efficient input mechanism for that. And so we built a platform that kind of looks like a walkie-talkie, but like when you start to use it, you realize like it kind of does a lot more. It's a mobile phone app, and the reason we're using BSD is like for all the back end for all of these mobile phones to talk to.
Well, that kind of leads me to the next question then. So how does FreeBSD fit into the infrastructure? Where is it deployed? What's it specifically doing there?
So we are using FreeBSD for everything. Like it's running the TLS termination is running all of the Node.js processes that make up our server infrastructure. It's running all of the Redis servers that are our caches in front of our many Riak clusters that we're using for persistent storage. So it's is running absolutely everything on the back end.
Cool.
Oh, very cool.
Had you considered any other platforms there, or did it just come down to that's the only one that had FreeBSD was the only one that had all the features you needed and the support you needed?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely had the discussion about like, okay, well, we're gonna do something, when it's time to buy our own machines, like, what are we going to put on them? There was definitely a discussion of like, well, maybe we should just do Linux, and a lot of this came down to the fact that we're running Node, and the way that the sort of visibility you get into a running Node process with dtrace is superior to what you would get if you ran on Linux. And because our entire stack is all Node, all of the software that we write in Node. The visibility about like what's going on in that process is best exposed through dtrace at the moment. So that was really like that counts for most of the reasons. I think had it not been for that, who knows which way it would have gone, but that sort of led us down I think a pretty healthy sort of exploration about like what are our actual technology needs, like what's actually important here, and to choose some technology based on like what we need, not just because everybody else is doing it.
Right.
Sure. So what features of FreeBSD are you specifically taking advantage of now? Are you guys doing any jails or PF? Obviously ZFS.
Yeah, we are jailsing everything. Yeah, so I mean, this is actually like still kind of under heavy development. Like when we were on SmartOS, they have zones from the Solaris heritage, and the way that had been deployed, we had each zone kind of looks like a full computer, and we are moving to a model of every process has its own zone or has its own jail, but in the migration period, every jail sort of looks more like a full computer, just because that's how all of our automation works. Yep. But yeah, the plan is full jails for absolutely every process we run.
Nice.
Do you use any other big features of FreeBSD? Is like there's a lot of IPv6 or anything?
No, we're not doing IPv6. Some PF.
Yeah, some PF, but FreeBSD networking support has been awesome. So like simple things like sockstat runs very fast.
Yes.
But if you want to track certain things, it's like a lot easier.
Yeah.
And jails is also like a killer feature. So every process actually like jailed right now. So we can actually easily move process across. So we are open sourcing that as well. So each jail has its own associated ZFS datasets. So you can easily migrate process across our infrastructure.
Yep.
Yeah, I guess the thing we didn't mention when I ran down all the technology we're using is like we're also using Chef to sort of automate and manage this infrastructure, and a bunch of the Chef sort of FreeBSD support is either for FreeBSD 9 or doesn't exist. So we've had to kind of pave the way a little bit on a bunch of things in Chef, specifically around jails. And so what's the status of the open sourcing of all that? And the plan is to open source all of these Chef related projects so that other FreeBSD users can benefit of that.
Yeah. Open source is in progress, and we also open source, like we had a kernel patch for dtrace. For dtrace support in Node, that's been accepted. So it's going to be in 10.1, 11, and also backported to 9x.
Cool.
And similarly, we have a couple of more user-learned patches that we have submitted as well.
Nice. I guess that raises a question I didn't think to ask before, but which version of FreeBSD are you actually running?
10.
Like 10 release or the stable branch?
10 release.
Okay. Yeah, it's 10 release. Yeah, I guess that's, yeah. Yep, 10 release.
Cool. So are there any specific aspects of BSD in general that made you the decision to move over better, other than obviously, I guess, the networking performance, the quality, but you mentioned community and documentation.
No, I mean those are the big ones. Yeah, it's just they all kind of address different aspects of the decision, but yeah, taken together, like so far we're pretty happy.
But it's
Cool.
A project that's willing to accept your patches and upstream them means that you don't have to maintain your own set of patches against FreeBSD, obviously. So that makes upgrading to 10.1 when it comes out much easier.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that was actually one of the first things that we did is one of our engineers, we were like, hey, can we run all our stack on BSD? And we tried out the dtrace stack helper stuff for Node, and like it didn't work. And so one of our engineers went to work on it, and like within a week, he'd already kind of figured it out and like gotten the process started, and then the next week, like his change was already accepted, and I was like, wow,
That's fast.
that's
Yeah.
that's a pretty big deal. I could not imagine that ever happening in a on a different operating system. Like so yeah, that definitely, that sort of willingness to engage with community, with new developers, that was pretty powerful, like pretty compelling.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, what are some of the things you'd like to see improved upon, or how could BSD be better for what you guys are doing?
So for what we're doing, like we were in a pretty good position, honestly, to switch to BSD, because we were already on an Illumos variant, and Illumos is like way not what everybody, like what most people run. Most people run Linux these days. So we had already kind of taken that on, and when moving to FreeBSD, it was a lot less painful for that reason. But I mean, I think the thing that I would really like to see is even more like sort of like all of these little differences that are not they don't actually matter. These differences between Linux and BSD, like primarily in the user land, like every one of them is just another sort of little roadblock to getting people to use BSD, and I feel like a lot of them nobody's even sure like why they're there anymore, or whether they matter. But I can assure you that all these little things, like, they super matter. Like when you have these decisions about like using FreeBSD, I mean when I've had these decisions about using BSD in other organizations, and like people try it out and they're like, I don't know, just everything's different, and like simple things like the output of WC has leading spaces, like why, like I don't know. Doubt that helps anybody's program do anything. But the WC, the GNU WC does not, right? So like people have scripts and like they break in subtle weird ways, and when you bring them over, and it's just like, oh, now you have to think about like porting your program, and like BSD make, like I know there's a long and rich heritage there, but like the fact that it's not compatible with GNU make like blows people up all the time. And I know it especially blows up people in the Node community who, because of the way the module build system works, if they have native modules that they're trying to compile, the fact that make isn't GNU make like always blows those things up. And I mean, just you can sort of run down the list, but like, man, I every one of them itself. Well, the make one's probably pretty big deal because of ports, etc. But I mean, every single one of those little things like adds up to just kind of like build resistance to it makes it hard to see past and to all the other good stuff that BSD has to offer. So yeah, I would really like to see it be fewer of those little incompatibilities, especially if like they don't actually matter. They're just kind of like a weird heritage that nobody bothered to change.
Yeah, some of them are long-standing, and some of them are fresher. Like I saw one, it wasn't that long ago. I forget which utility it was. It might have been sort or something. And the GNU version was adding a new flag, but that flag had already meant something in BSD.
Right.
But they were like, well, no, we like this letter better. We think it's logical, and we're not going to use something else just to not to step on what your sort already does. And it's like, well, our tool was here first.
I know.
But yeah, at the same time,
it's-
trying to get some of that stuff to be compatible. But at the same time, it's like, well, we can't switch what the flag does in ours because all of our scripts depend on it doing it this way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, trying to shrink down some of those pain points would help a lot.
Yeah, there are also like a lot of subtle things. Like example, like CP command, CP minus R with a slash without a slash. What GNU wants and what BSD CP wants.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had to switch over to the Mac, that was a big issue for me. Like a lot of scripts were breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We had like Linux scripts, and a lot of guys like now grow up like writing it on Linux. They basically figure out the command line like on their own. Right? The same command they come and put it in BSD, it just doesn't work.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like how exactly, like if there's easy like translation layer, or let the ports use the default GNU, and if I want to like Linux like environment, right, that may actually like bring a lot more like new users into the BSD community. Right? If you can just like give them like install this package, all GNU becomes the default.
Right.
Like that's what I do on my Mac. Like I install all the GNU tools and set the path so that like whenever I run anything, my default path is GNU first and then the default BSD path. So all the GNU tools, all the Linux syntax just works. So it makes it easier. So we're trying to like figure it out because people complain about that. So we all understand that like BSD came first. I exactly agree. Like a lot of the like subtle flags, BSD would have already had the same flag before. It would have meant differently. But for the new users whom we're trying to get them into BSD, it's harder for them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, a Linux userland port could probably be fairly
This would be
easily
interesting. Yeah.
done.
I mean,
Maybe
I
even
think
set it on a per user basis.
Yeah, and just set your path to use the Linux and path. That shouldn't be too hard.
Something
Yeah,
like
that'll be
that.
awesome.
Yes.
That'll just like that'll make people's lives so much easier.
Yeah, it's just be like,
Yeah,
I'm
you
used
don't
to
enforce
this, and I want my shell to be bash, and let's just make this happen.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that because yes, exactly. Like the people, so much stuff we found in getting all of our whole environment over assumed binsh was bash,
Yes.
and like turns out had like these weird other things, and like. I mean, I know that like that's bad or whatever, and like
Well,
you should
because
never
even on Debian, it's not bash, but yeah.
yeah, but you know what? Like
Yeah,
people
exactly.
assume-
Well,
And,
there was a question about that on the mailing list. I think it was Craig Rodriguez, and there's a whole thread about it because they're like, well, can we make an off by default option when you install bash from the ports tree to make it install the symlink to
default.
bin bash, so that
Right.
when if we were say using LDAP and we have some Linux boxes and some FreeBSD boxes, when the Linux person logs into the BSD box, their shell is valid. But in FreeBSD, there's a rule against ports touching the base part of the system. Right? They can only write to user local whatever. And
Yep.
it's like, yes, but do you want new users or not?
Yeah, that is that is a very real like thing to consider, and I think you can look at the like how this plays out in let's just say the Illumos community, who has really not embraced this. Like they've been really resistant to sort of keeping things the traditional way that they've always done it, and adoption of that platform is certainly nowhere near that of BSD, but like it's not heading in a good direction, and like it is a very real concern that like if people sort of come up and like their first machine is maybe it's a Mac, but like most of the places that they work, like they run software on Linux. Everything that we can do to ease that transition is gonna pay off in a larger community.
So other than that, the first little bit, have you had much other experience with the BSD community so far, and how's that been?
Not too much. I mean, some mailing list posts, mostly lots of mailing list reading,
Yeah.
and just that has been very, very positive. I mean, it always seems like reasonable, like compared to what I see like in the Linux universe, especially like reading the BSD mailing list. It always just seems. I mean, I know probably people feel like maybe sometimes it's arguments or whatever, but like. Man, compared to the Linux world, it is reasoned debate between serious technology professionals.
Yeah. Well, there was a survey done a little while ago, and they found that the average age of a BSD developer is 10 years older than a Linux developer.
Oh, wow.
and that probably has something to do with the
Yep.
format of the discussions on the mailing list.
Yeah.
Was there ever information that you were trying to find that you found it hard to find, where you had to go digging through a mailing list to find out what was going on with X, rather than being able to just find that more easily?
Not sure. I can't remember. I mean, I think that we just posted to the mailing list a couple times when we couldn't figure it out, and people answered, and that was fine.
It made it easier for us because like we're used to Illumos world, like where it was a lot harder for us to find it. So if you come from Linux world, it would maybe like where it's like Google can find it more. So we found like FreeBSD is a lot better than Illumos on like documentation, right? Documentation and findability with Google.
Yeah.
Right? So if you just Google it, like mailing list would actually show you the answer.
Or somebody wrote a blog post or whatever.
Yeah,
but the fact that you can solve your problems with Google is crucial these days.
Mm-hmm. That's how we research and fix a lot of our problems here.
Yep, absolutely.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you guys like to mention before we go?
No, I mean, I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Cool.
Well, thank you guys so much for being on the show with us today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Great. Yeah, happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Oh, all right. We'll be back with our next segment in just a moment. Okay, and we're back. And before we get into our weekly news roundup, of course, we want to mention the other sponsor of the show this week, which is Tarsnap. And of course, the URL for that, tarsnap.com/BSDnow. Go there, sign up, let them know that we sent you. But you guys know we've talked about Tarsnap a bit and why you need to do backups, the importance of doing backups. But the best thing about Tarsnap, you don't have to trust the remote end.
Exactly.
Everything that leaves your box is fully encrypted, and that's the way backups should be done. That way you don't have to trust the data center, you don't have to trust the employees at the data center or whatever government agencies they might be working with.
Yes, and you don't have to worry about the NSA being in the middle of the line or anything because everything's encrypted.
Yeah, before it leaves.
Yeah, and only you have the key, and you have the source code for the client, which you can compile yourself, so you know exactly what's happening.
Yep.
It's not encrypted with quote marks, it's encrypted with science. Or math,
Science,
actually.
Technology.
With math.
But yeah, so again, you don't have to trust us or trust the Tarsnap people directly, but the code's open. Take a look at it and verify for yourself. Trust but verify. Come on, guys.
Exactly. I remember we did a link from Michael Lucas not that long ago where it's like, get the source code from the Tarsnap website over SSL, verify the key with PGP, and compile it yourself, and then you're absolutely sure nobody has done anything hinky with your binary. Or if you're lazy, you can just install from the ports tree. Or with the binary packages for all the BSDs, Linux, OS 10, Minix, OpenIndiana, Cygwin for Windows, even if you want to do command line backups on Windows.
Definitely. So, and it's also got a nice Tarsnap or a tar style syntax.
Yes. So if you know how to use tar, you know how to use Tarsnap.
Yep. So again, check that out, tarsnap.com/BSDnow, and let them know we sent you. Okay. So let's get into our news roundup for the week. So first up, some release news. It looks like Ghost BSD 4.0 has been released, and this is, I think, their first one based on FreeBSD 10. So that's, of course, exciting, and congratulations, you guys. Nice release. But some of the bigger changes, of course, is Clang instead of GCC, and that's from 10. Package NG by default. Make has been replaced by bmake. So the Ghost BSD default desktop is also Mate, but they have different styles of workstations you can choose from. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead.
Classic, PuRTY, and availability. Element. Yes.
Element, yes. Yes. So Mate, for those who don't know, is basically like a GNOME 2.
Yes, it's like a fork of GNOME 2.
Yeah. So a continuation of the GNOME 2 legacy. So if you'd like to try something like that running on a FreeBSD base, then go ahead and give Ghost BSD a shot. Okay, so next up we have a cool article about reports from PF about banned IPs, which, if you guys are sysadmins or you've run any kind of public-facing server, you've probably seen this. I know we all have. You've seen your logs fill up with a lot of unwanted traffic, which is especially true if you run SSH on port 22, which the author of this post seems to be doing. So, of course, you can do a lot of work with just PF and some brute force tables, but in this case, the article is going to be going through talking about how to do some different options for blocking Chinese IPs and break-in attempts. So, an interesting read, again, if you run any kind of public-facing services. And it also includes a useful script he wrote to get reports about the IPs being blocked via email. So, what do you think of this, Alan? Because I kind of use like fail to ban personally and
I
tie
use
that
deny
into
host,
PF.
but yeah. So with this, they're talking about making it a bit smarter and dealing with reports.
Because I've run mail as well, so I did deny host for a long time with SSH, but then it was like, but I want something to scrub the IMAP connections and
Right. When I
whatnot.
needed to stop hammering against my POP3 server, I tried SSH guard and liked that because it could use IPFW, which is what I have installed on our servers. We don't run PF on the servers.
Oh, okay.
But yes, we ended up using fail to ban because we needed it for our Asterix server. Our phone server was getting pounded, and fail to ban was the only one that had a module for that.
Oh, that's nice.
But
That's
yes,
nice.
what they have here basically is that I guess it looks like once a day you get a summary of the IPs that were banned, so you can always notice when one that shouldn't be on that list got on that list.
Wait a minute.
No matter how we seem to tune ours over at Scale Engine, there's always a customer that manages to get themselves locked out by pounding on the server just a little bit too much.
Yeah. And of course, I don't remember my password was. Well, I'm sorry. about that.
After 2 or 3 tries, you email support and get it reset. Otherwise, your IP gets banned, and then they're
Ours is
like,
pretty
my IP
strict.
is banned. It's
One
like, well, oh wow. Sometimes I fat finger my password when I'm on my laptop.
Well, I think we have it set up where you get one try via password, but if you have an SSH key, you get a couple more tries or something
like that.
because we have keys. But yeah,
Right. Well, because
still.
the password that's local and doesn't actually get transmitted. So yeah.
Correct. But anywho,
Well, yes, because the password on my key for the FreeBSD cluster is so long that it's hard to do it right the first time.
Sure. Nice. But again, this is an interesting article, and if you guys run any kind of public-facing services, this is something you should think about now instead of later when it's too late.
Yeah.
So, and of course, aside from the DDoS or whatever, but if somebody's breaking in or attempting to break in, you probably want to know about that and find a way to block them.
Yep.
Okay, let's see here. Next up, we have some more NetBSD information. So I guess a couple new releases. 615 and 606 have been released. So that's their 6.1 and 6.0 branches, respectively. They've been updated. They include a number of new security and stability fixes, and of course, I'm sure OpenSSL is a primary culprit behind many of those.
OpenSSL, BISO HTTPD, OpenSSL, is some system call stuff, compatibility layer, user-controlled memory allocation in modctl, and memory leak in set socket options system call.
Okay, nice.
Also fixed OpenPAM, and in the kernel they got a bunch of new drivers, including fixing a race condition in the tap driver. Fixed an mbuff leak in IP filter, the old firewall that apparently people still use.
Yep.
Fixed 2 overflows and a memory corruption bug in PTYFS, which is how they automatically generate the PTYs for people logging in and stuff. They also updated their time zone data and updated OpenSSL 101i and fixed an X server crash.
Nice. Oh, so a good slew of updates, it sounds like. That's a very worthy reason to go ahead and update your NetBSD boxes to the latest as soon as possible.
It's a nice release map graph showing how their releases work.
Cool.
Yep.
Okay, well, speaking of releases, we also have some OpenSSH release announcements. So we got 6.7 has finally been released. It looks like they've done a lot of major internal refactoring done to make OpenSSH usable as a library, which is very cool.
Yes.
And the feature I'm most excited about, SFTP transfers can now be resumed.
It's like, how did that not happen 15 years ago at least?
1997 called. They want their feature back.
Exactly. But I'm very glad to see that.
Yeah, we're glad to see it for sure. So, of course, lots of bug fixes. We've got a few more new features. Check the release notes for all the details on that. This release disables some insecure ciphers by default. So keep that in mind if maybe you still connect to some legacy devices that use ARC4 or CBC modes.
Right.
So,
especially also if you connect from a client that's running a really old version, you'll want to update the client on there, or as a last resort, re-enable the bad ciphers, but I would recommend against that one.
Yeah,
But yeah,
if you can-
specifically if
don't
you're-
do that unless you really have to.
But if you're SSHing into an old Cisco or something that still uses ARC4 or something like that, you probably want to, you'll have to re-enable that in your SSH config for the client side. They've also added support for TCP wrappers. They removed support for TCP wrappers, which I think will break deny hosts for blocking your SSH. The SSH spam, because it uses lib TCP wrappers to block people. Interesting.
Cool.
Anyway, they also
have,
fixed a bug that caused 0.2% of connections using Curve 25519 key exchange methods to fail when connecting with something that implements the specifications slightly differently.
Okay.
And then, yes, major refactoring, add support for Unix domain socket forwarding. A remote TCP port may be forwarded to a local Unix domain socket and vice versa. And that's handy.
Well, hey, one of the big ones I see here is Portable OpenSSH now supports building against the Libre SSL Portable. So that's going to be very useful here in the near future.
Yep. SSH Keygen can now generate your SSH fingerprint records for DNS using the ED25519 key type,
Nice.
which is useful now. When rekeying, skip DNS lookups if of the host key if it is the same as the one sent during the initial key exchange. That's resolved a problem from that they had found.
Okay.
Lots of other
Looks like
interesting
some other
stuff.
miscellaneous fixes, but we also have a Twitter post from Brian Drury who
Yes.
does the port of that on FreeBSD, and he mentioned it'll be a little while before we update to it in FreeBSD. He said they've refactored a lot of the code, which we mentioned, which broke a lot of the patches used on FreeBSD.
Yeah.
So he
He's
did
just
reply
gotta-
back with a comment saying hopefully something next week. So
Yeah. Normally
see.
he gets on that like right away, but because there's such a big diff, he's going to have to
Yeah.
go through all of his patches, sort them out, and ensure that everything works
things,
properly.
yeah, they need to work
'Cause,
properly.
nobody wants an open SSH that doesn't do what you think it does.
Yeah, that's a bad one when you package upgrade the
Yeah.
portable version. It's like, it doesn't work no more.
Yeah, or it works, but it doesn't. It's some bit of the crypto doesn't work properly or something like that. And you're like,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that would be bad.
That would be very bad. Well, cool. Okay, well, that's the end of our weekly news roundup. So we'll be back in just a moment with our next section. Okay, we're back, and it's time to do some feedback and questions from you guys in the audience. So I guess you're going to take the first one here, Alan. So
Yes,
take it away.
Andre writes in about Beehive. He says, I have a question regarding networking with the Beehive virtualization. He says, in one of the episodes, you did a live demo and he started playing with Beehive. So he's running FreeBSD 10.0-release on his host and the guest. First of all, that mostly works, although if you grab one of like the 10 snapshots that are much newer, or actually even just grab one of the betas, or I guess the release candidate now of 10.1 has much improved Beehive code. You might consider that. So he loads up the Beehive driver and creates a bridge, creates a tap device, and sets the MTU on it because he wants to bridge it to his VLAN that has a high MTU, and sets up his bridge and then boots his virtual machine. And he says when he tried to copy an 80 megabyte file from the host to the guest using SCP, the speed was very slow in the beginning and then it stalled altogether, and he's not sure what happened. He said he found on the net people complaining about the VTNet driver and the hardware checksum and TCP segmentation offloading, and found that they recommended disabling it, and he tried that, but it didn't seem to have any luck. So he shows in his guest he added VTNet, CSUM disable, TSO disable, and LRO disable, and actually applied it to the interface. Depends, if you're trying to copy from the guest to the host, then that's not even really going through your network. It'd be interesting to see if he had the same issue if he actually tried to copy to another machine on the LAN or whatever. Also, if you're trying to just network between the guest and the host, instead of making a bridge, if you just configure an IP address on the tap interface on the host and then another IP address on the same subnet on the VTNet interface inside the guest, you can network basically almost localhost that way, and see if that makes a difference. But the other thing to try would actually be to disable those features on your physical NIC that you're bridging to. So doing, if config VLAN 0 minus RxCSum and minus TXCSum, TSO and LRO, etc. Although you shouldn't have to do that. I've not had any trouble. I have some beehives running, doing 500 megabits a second to the internet right now without any issues. So, but I'm running a reasonably current version of current rather than 10 release. 10 release had quite a number of bugs, including basically CentOS didn't work if you had more than 3 gigs of RAM in your virtual machine, which made it pretty useless for me.
Sure.
That's why
there's been a lot of changes since then.
Looking forward to 10.1 because it has a lot of the cool fixes in. Actually, I was talking to Peter Grehan last night, and they were trying to come up with the text for the status reports, because the FreeBSD quarterly status reports are due yesterday, but they'll accept some late ones if people hurry up. And they're trying to get one in on Beehive. So we'll definitely be going over that probably next week or the week after when those come out, because that's where all the goodies on everything that's happened over the last 3 months will be laid out in bullet point form, which is perfect for a podcast.
Nice.
But yeah, so I would try just using tap without a bridge and see if your networking between the VM and the host is better there, and also try disabling those features on the hardware and see what happens then. And yeah.
Okay.
Also, I'm going to add to the FreeBSD handbook soon the instructions on how to do a NATed network for your VM. So specifically, the bridge setup we talked about doesn't work if your internet connection is over your wireless, right? So I came up with a sort of hacky solution I use when at conferences, I'm on the conference Wi-Fi, but I still want to work on my Beehive. And we just do a quick little IPFW NAT that allows us to allow your VM to have networking without having to use a bridge.
That's nice. Oh, cool. Okay, well, hopefully he answered your question there. So next up, we have Carl asking about jailed X11. So he writes in, says, I've created a jail in PCBSD with Warden. He said he installed X, OpenBox, LXDE, etc., etc. Everything works great, accessing it with SSVNC Viewer. He says one thing which is strange, you can't seem to be able to access it with a regular user created within the jail through SSVNC Viewer, -user, username, IP, etc. He said it always ends up logging in as root. He said, why? Because, of course, he wants to test the Tor bundle, which needs to be started as a user, not root. Of course, I can have it start, but it'd be nice to be a user, not root. So in this case, I guess I would ask how you're starting your Xorg in the jail, because X by default is going to run as root when you start it up, like the startx command or whatever. When I had done this with VNC, not necessarily on a jail, but on the regular host, I had to use some intermediary like GDM as a login manager. So when you VNC in, you're getting into the GDM login page, and then you log in as your user and your desktop session comes up. If you're talking to something already running, with startx run as root, even in the jail, then yeah, when you connect to it, you're gonna bring up a terminal and go, who am I? I'm root. So that would probably be the thing I would look at. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Alan?
Not especially, no. I don't know that much about X.
Okay, well, yeah, when I had messed with it with VNC in particular, VNC just connects to the existing running X session. So again, if X started as root, which it wants to, based on FreeBSD, X usually does want to run as root.
Yeah, I think OpenBSD is the only X that doesn't run as root.
Correct. So what I would do is just install some login manager in addition. So again, instead of starting X directly in the jail, you'll have GDM or something else actually do the startup. So when you connect, you're getting just a login prompt in your VNC viewer, and then you can log in as your username, and everything should be hunky-dory at that point.
Yes, and then you'll be able to run Tor as a regular user.
Correct. So hopefully that points you in the right direction, Carl.
Yep.
Okay, next up, were you going to take this next one, Alan?
Sure. So Posniffer, I guess. I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that. Anyway, he says he's got a Mac Pro that he got for work, and wants to install FreeBSD on it. He says he's prepared a USB stick from the latest memstick.img. Although when he says that, I'm not sure which one he means by latest. In particular, if you look at the 11 snapshots on the FreeBSD FTP site, you'll notice there's a separate set of them. For 11, they're merged. For 10.1, there's separate ones that are for the UEFI boot, because apparently some people were having problems with the combined image. But the
Sure.
11 snapshots, the USB mem sticks should boot regular or UEFI, whereas for the 10.1 snapshots, there are special images that will actually say UEFI in the file name, and that's the one you want. And then those should just boot. Macs use a different-ish version of UEFI. They're EFI 1, not 2. So I'm not familiar with that at all.
Sure.
He mentions a couple things. He found something on the FreeBSD wiki about installing FreeBSD 8 with ZFS. That's rather dated now, so I wouldn't assume that all that's going to work perfectly.
Sure.
Yes, can I simply use refit to install root on ZFS from his USB and be all good? On my laptop, I have off my main hard drive using UEFI booting with refit Windows and FreeBSD 11, but the FreeBSD UEFI bootloader just finds the first UFS partition it can find and boots off of it. So it's not currently capable of doing ZFS. Now, you can have a small UFS partition that contains the kernel and like just your /boot, and then have everything else come from a ZFS. So it's almost root on ZFS, but not exactly. But currently there's no way to do that. However, refit itself, there's a separate project someone else did. It's currently GPLv3, but they ported the ZFS and UFS drivers from Grub to be UEFI binaries or UEFI binaries, so that refit can actually see ZFS file systems. But I don't know that that's quite enough to actually let you boot it yet.
Probably not quite. Getting close, though.
Yes. I think if you use the UFS driver, then you could possibly... Yeah, I don't know how it works. But anyway, it's getting towards there. Currently, I would, if you're using UEFI, you'd probably have to stick with UFS, at least for the boot part of your system, and then you could have a regular non-booting ZFS pool. And yeah, on the wiki, look at the wiki page on UEFI, because that MacBook page, the section on ZFS you're looking at talks about FreeBSD 8.0, which would literally be 5 years ago now, 4 years ago, 5 years ago now.
It's a tad bit dated.
Yeah. And also that's talking about a laptop, and a Mac Pro is a desktop. So I don't know how many differences there are.
Sure. Okay. Hopefully answer your question there.
Yep.
So next up, I'll read from Brad. He's asking about drive layouts. He said, my plan is to, within the next couple weeks, build out a FreeNAS box based on Brian Moses' EconoNAS article on his blog. He said, I went that route because I had everything except 2 of the drives and the motherboard lying around the house. He said, in any case, I intend to build a FreeNAS 9.2.1.8 release with 3 terabytes in RAID Z, probably with Jelly encryption. The other project I'll probably do at some point is convert my workstation to PCBSD. It has a 750 gig Samsung drive and will probably inherit the 1.5 terabyte drive from the existing file server once the FreeNAS box goes live. So he said, after that, here's his questions. He has an unopened Kingston 120 gigabyte SSD drive. So what should I do with this? Would it be better to use it in the workstation as a second drive, or in the FreeNAS, or in the workstation as a ZIL? I plan to do ZFS, so I'll have sync writes, but the doc I was reading says you should probably have a pair of mirrored SSDs for ZIL, and 99% of home users probably don't need it. So he's putting it out there for us. Well, I think I agree with the doc there. Like, you probably won't use it.
Right. In particular, he mentions doing NFS, though. So those are synchronous writes, and that's the only time a ZIL gets used, right? If you're using your FreeNAS to store media files to play on your TV, then a ZIL is going to be a waste of an SSD.
Sure.
Even an L2 ARC probably isn't that helpful on a system like that, because your spinning drives, when you're reading big gobs of file in a straight line, can easily do that. Like,
yeah, they can handle that.
I have one downstairs with 6 3 terabyte drives, and it can read over 600 megabytes a second if you're just pulling files linearly off the disk. Where, if you're seeking around, you can't do that as much, but that's where the SSD would help.
I was going to say, it depends on how much NFS he's doing, though, as well. I'm not
Right,
even
and
sure
how
he'll
many
hit the limit where a ZIL will matter.
Exactly, and how much writes he's doing and so on.
Well, take a look at a ZFS stats, the port for that. After you've got it up and running, you can see if anything like this would help.
Exactly.
My recommendation would be to use it as a workstation drive, though, like for your primary boot drive.
Yeah, that's what I did. My SSD is in my laptop, and I just have a ZFS pool that is literally just all SSD storage, and it's crazy fast.
Yeah, that's how my laptop and my workstation are too.
Yeah, because like you said, the recommendation is to mirror your ZILs, because a ZIL is basically data's coming in, we're going to write it to the ZIL because it's fast, and then later we'll write it out to the regular drives. So if your ZIL dies, then all that stuff you just wrote to the disk is lost, and that's why you normally would want to mirror them at least. And also the ZIL takes a lot of pounding, so a regular consumer grade SSD is probably not what you want. You want a high endurance enterprise SSD if you're doing a ZIL. But like we said, most people don't need a ZIL. None of my servers even have a ZIL.
I think it would be very unlikely that you would end up needing it in any case. So
exactly.
I'd pop it in the workstation, make it your primary data disk, and then put a second spinning disk in there for all the cold storage stuff or your home directory or something else.
Exactly.
But having the system boot off the SSD is
so
very
nice. Things go fast.
It does. Okay, well, cool. Hopefully answer your question okay there, Brad. And next up, I guess, Solomon. I'll let you read the war story, Alan.
Solomon's writing in to share a mini war story about what happened to him today. He says, one of the first things I do every morning is check his email for alerts and reports from the different monitoring systems he has at work. After fumbling with the phone for a bit, I quickly realized that I hadn't received any mails since about 11 p.m. the previous night. I didn't think too much of it at the time because, he said, once I turned off wireless on my phone, everything synced up, and he figured that the AP at his house just needed to reboot or something.
Sure.
Due to a previously scheduled maintenance window, I had to go into work and patch some systems. I completely forgot about the issues with my access point at home. After getting things rolling at work, I tried and failed to connect my home server. Again, I figured it wasn't anything serious. Maybe it was turned off, or he just hadn't, if the access point was giving him issues, maybe he couldn't, his port forwarding rules weren't working, whatever. He says it wasn't until he got home that he realized the true nature of the situation. At some point during the previous night, the 7-year-old desktop machine that he had been running his pfSense router on had given up. It was completely dead, and at that point he realized he hadn't been backing up his pfSense config. Whoops.
Ouch.
He says he's back up and running now, but it was a serious pain trying to remember all the changes and settings that he had made in the past. So the moral of the story is back up your configs.
Yes, definitely.
We covered a tool, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, for backing up your pfSense config.
Mm-hmm.
And we also recommended somebody write a nice plugin for Tarsnap to back up your configs to your Tarsnap, since the config is going to be so small, your Tarsnap cost is going to be like 2 cents a month, and that's definitely worth it, keeping your pfSense configs alive.
Plus, like he said, trying to remember, a lot of pfSense rules and stuff are things you set once and then you forget about. Like, you just don't.
The pfSense install we have for one of our customers, I set up like 3 years ago. Every once in a while, like every time there's an update, I log in and install the updates, but nobody's looked at the rules in a long time.
It just works.
Also, the customer has access. So the customer's gone in there and made some rules that even if I did know all the rules I had created off the top of my head and recreated them, I'd be missing all the rules they created. And that's why we back up the configs.
Definitely. Yeah. Let his example be a warning to others. If you're running a pfSense or any other kind of box like that, back up your configs, please.
Yes.
Do yourself a favor.
Back up everything. That is what Tarsnap is for. We don't tell you about it every week because, we do like Colin. He's a nice guy, but we do tell you for your benefit, not ours.
Correct. Okay, well, that's the end of our weekly feedback and question section. So, of course, as we wrap up the show here, we do want to mention that all our tutorials will be posted in their entirety to bsdnow.tv, so check them out. We also want to give a special thank you to our viewer, CJ, for writing today's tutorial. Thank you, CJ. We appreciate that. And as usual, you can send your questions, comments, show ideas, topics, or stories you want mentioned on the show to feedback@bsdnow.tv. We always love hearing from viewers, even if you don't have a question. So send something in. And, of course, it's not directly related to BSD, but videos from the Illumos Day 2014 are online. So if you're interested in that, that could be an interesting view. Also, EuroBSDCon 2014 videos are being uploaded, so only a couple weeks ago that we did that, and we'll have all the links to share hopefully in a future episode.
Yes.
And of course, you can watch us live Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC, and we'd love to have you with us while we're actually recording the show.
Yep.
Okay, well, fantastic. Well, anything else you want to mention, Alan?
Nope, that's about it for that one.
Back up your configs, folks.
Yes, exactly.
That's the takeaway from this week's episode. Well, very cool. Well, again, look forward to seeing you guys next week and hopefully seeing some of you in person at Meet BSD. Get your travel arrangements done. So until next week, folks. Web advertising can be a nuisance. At best, they clutter up pages and slow down browsing. At worst, they can be scams or malware vectors or engage widespread trafficking of the end user. So most users are now familiar with ad blocking in their web browsers, but for some devices that isn't so practical. What about the ads on gaming consoles or other devices? What if we want to block advertising on any device that's connected to our network? To do so, there are two things we need to set up. The first is DNS Mask, a combined DHCP and DNS server. The second is PixelServe, a Perl script that serves transparent GIF file to avoid 404 errors on domains that got blocked by DNS Mask. The ideal place to set this up would be on a gateway, but in reality, you could set this up anywhere. For the tutorial today, we're going to be assuming that we're using FreeBSD and that 192.168.1.1 is our gateway. To get started, you're going to need the following. DNS Mask, of course, which is in DNS/DNS Mask, and then Perl, which is Lang Perl. Most systems will probably have that on them. Yep. But go ahead and take it away, Alan.
Thank you. So for this week's tutorial about ad blocking, the first thing we need is DNS Mask. So I can do package install DNS Mask and Perl, which I've already done, but anyway. So now if we go to user local etc, we can edit the DNS Mask config file. In particular, we are looking for the interface. So we'll set the interface equal to EM0 because that's the interface on our virtual machine here, where we want it to work. And then we'll set the listen address to the address we want it to run on. That matches my machine here. We can also make sure that the config directory matches up with what we'd expect. Now we can make that directory so it'll actually exist. The nice thing about these little .d directories is you can deposit many little files in them and keep your configs separate. It's very handy. So now in our resolve.conf, we'll set the name server to be the one we just set up. And in our rc.conf, we will set up DNS mask enable equals yes. So now service DNS mask start, and it's running. Next, what we need are lists of domains to block. For this, you need to copy and paste the small script that we just wrote. So we'll make a new file and drop this script into it. So this goes out and downloads the list of ad servers from this public service. So it tells us where we want to drop the file when we're done. And we want to reroute all traffic that list was routing to 127.0.0.1 to the IP address of our DNS mask server, where we've set up the little PixServe, which will serve the 1 pixel GIF file, so that the JavaScript and so on in the websites don't freak out because it can't get the image. It will instead just show a little invisible image. You can also add lines here to delete certain sites that you do want to see ads for. and then you're good to go. Then once you run that, it should just work. Quickly download the list and then put the DNS config back. Seems to be a problem with the configuration here. Ah, okay. Problem is my fault. Never mind. Goody. So now if we try to DNS mask does not appear to be working as intended. Ah, I forgot to restart it. My fault. There we go. So now when we try to ping doubleclick.net, it goes to our local address instead of the remote one, which is what we actually want. Now we can do PixelServe, which will actually do the stuff we want. So if we just go to user local bin, and we will download a copy of PixelServe and make it executable. Edit it. You can see here by default it'll listen on every address, and maybe we only want it to listen on one specific address. So we do that change. Then also we have a little rc.d script here for it. So if we edit user local etc rc.d PixelServe and splat down this little config, then all we need to do is PixelServe enable equals yes. Sorry, I should say sysrc. You can now see in our rc.conf that PixelServe is enabled. So service PixelServe start. That rc.d script does not seem to be working quite as expected. Ah, paste problem. Anyway, so now when we try to go to any domain that has doubleclick.net in it, it tries to download this 1-pixel GIF instead. So problem solved. And that's how you have to do it. Your other alternative is to run a real web server. If you run Nginx, there's actually a module that will generate those tiny GIF files on the fly, and a bunch of other stuff. You can also import your AdBlock rules from AdBlock or somewhere else. And also, it's important to keep an updated list of those domains. A lot of the advertising companies now have taken to registering new random domains and switching their advertising on different domains all the time so that they can maneuver around those block lists. But you can also consider all the other implications of this. But sticking this on your router and allows you to block ads across your entire network without having to do it for each individual device, which is handy because it can block ads in places where you can't install AdBlock, like, for example, on your console, on a phone, even the embedded apps in, for example, Skype. If they can't load, then you'll just have literal 1 pixel images instead, and it'll be much better. So, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.